Every morning, before the sun reached the cobblestone streets, Mr. Finch kneaded dough in his tiny bakery on Willow Lane. His pastries were famous for their golden crusts and delicate flavors, but few knew the true reason his shop was always busy. In the hush of dawn, he slipped thin, folded notes into the heart of each loaf destined for a select few. A twist of dough sealed every secret. Mrs. Alder would ask for a cherry tart, always on Wednesdays, her eyes scanning the street as she waited. Young Thomas preferred croissants, picking them up just after school, his fingers trembling slightly as he accepted the package. Each received a unique treat, but more importantly, a message only they could decode. A recipe for hope, a warning, or a simple reassurance. No one ever questioned why Mr. Finch's hands shook as he dusted flour over the counter, or why he watched the door so carefully, his gaze sharp and alert. One day, a stranger ordered a lemon scone, the code for urgent news. Mr. Finch nodded, hiding a trembling smile, and sent the message out, trusting his pastries to keep the town's secrets safe for another day. The sky blushed pink as the first rays of dawn crept over the silent main street. Dust swirled in the chill morning air, carried by a faint breeze that whispered through empty alleyways. Two figures faced each other, boots planted firmly on the cracked wooden planks, hands twitching near their worn holsters. Jed's eyes narrowed, jaw clenched tight, muscles coiled like springs ready to snap. Across from him, Cole's lips curled in a half-smile, the same smirk that had haunted Jed since the night their partnership splintered under the weight of greed and lies. Shadows stretched long behind them, merging with the creeping light. The town watched from behind curtained windows, breaths held in tense silence. In the hush, a lone crow called, breaking the stillness with a sharp caw. Jed's mind flickered back to laughter shared, dreams built on trust, then shattered by betrayal's cruel hand. Cole's gaze flickered just once to the battered locket dangling from Jed's neck. A silent apology, too late to mend what was broken. The church bell tolled once, its sound heavy with finality. A heartbeat later, hands moved, swift, practiced, desperate. Echoes of gunfire rolled across the waking land, shattering the fragile calm. Dust settled slowly. Cole dropped to his knees, pain and regret mingling in his fading eyes. Jed stood, shoulders heavy with the weight of what had been lost, as the sun crowned the horizon in a blaze of gold. Old scores were settled, but peace was nowhere to be found in the quiet aftermath. Every night, the old elevator at 12 Maple Street hummed to life, its brass buttons gleaming under flickering lights. Residents whispered about its oddities, but no one remembered the last time it stopped where they expected. One evening, Claire, returning late from work, pressed the button for the 5th floor. The doors groaned shut, and the lift shuddered. Instead of rising, it descended far below the basement, deeper than the building's blueprints allowed. When the doors parted, she found herself in a corridor lined with doors, each marked with the names of former tenants. Some she recalled, others she'd never heard. Shadows stretched across the floor, and a chill swept over her. She tried the elevator button again, desperate to leave, but the doors refused to close. Behind her, one of the corridor doors creaked open. A soft voice called her name. Heart pounding, Claire darted back into the elevator, mashing buttons wildly. The doors finally slid shut, and the lift rocketed upward, returning her to the lobby. The next morning, the elevator was out of order. No one else spoke of strange floors, but Claire never rode after dark again. Rain drummed steadily against the old attic window as Lily tiptoed past sleeping shadows that seemed to stretch endlessly. Clutched tightly in her small fist was a faded map, carefully drawn by her grandfather many years ago. Somewhere hidden in the house, he had said, a treasure waited. But first, she needed to find the lost key. The wooden floor creaked softly beneath her feet as she passed the towering grandfather clock, its hands frozen at midnight, casting eerie shapes on the walls. In the dim hallway, darkness pressed close, but Lily's determination shone brighter than her trembling flashlight. She slipped quietly into her parents' room, heart pounding wildly, recalling the story her grandfather told. The key was hidden where dreams begin. She knelt beside the bed, reaching cautiously under the heavy frame. Her fingers brushed something cold and metallic. She pulled out an old iron key, its teeth worn smooth from years of use. Back in the attic, she found the dusty trunk marked with her grandfather's initials. The key fit perfectly into the lock. Inside, she discovered a wooden box filled with yellowed letters, ancient coins, and a delicate locket holding a tiny photo of her grandfather as a boy. Lily smiled, warmth blooming in her chest. She had found the treasure, and a new story to cherish forever. In the heart of Windermere stood a towering clock, its face adorned with gilded hands and swirling patterns that caught the sunlight each morning. The townsfolk often wondered why, even during fierce storms or sudden power outages, the clock never faltered or lost a single second. Some believed it was the work of masterful craftsmanship, but old Mrs. Bellamy whispered of something far more mysterious, an enchantment woven into its very core. Each dawn, the clock chimed with a melody so crisp and clear that birds would pause mid-flight and shopkeepers would set their days by its gentle, unwavering rhythm. One quiet evening, a curious child named Elliot, drawn by the enchanting sound, sneaked inside the clock tower. To his surprise, he found not cogs and gears, but a grand old man, the maestro, standing before an invisible orchestra. With every graceful sweep of his baton, the clock's chimes rang out, guiding the town's day with perfect precision. Elliot watched, mesmerized, as the maestro smiled and nodded, never missing a single beat. When the final note faded, the maestro turned, placing a finger to his lips in a silent plea for secrecy. Elliot tiptoed away, heart pounding with wonder, knowing he had witnessed the secret force behind the town's perfect time, a delicate harmony that kept Windermere in sync, every hour, every day. Elena pressed her palm against the cracked leather cover of the old map. Dust motes danced in the morning light as she carefully unrolled it across her cluttered desk. The lines were faint, looping into places that no current map showed, as if charting a world forgotten by time. One mark, a tiny star, glowed gold in the corner, drawing her eyes with an almost magnetic pull. Driven by a mix of curiosity and determination, Elena packed her gear and followed the map's path through winding forests and overgrown meadows, each step taking her deeper into the unknown. After hours of trekking, she reached a forgotten stone archway, half swallowed by thick ivy and moss. Her heart pounded as she stepped through, crossing a threshold into the heart of a city lost to time. Crumbling towers leaned over silent plazas, their shadows long and still. Mosaic floors shimmered faintly with colors untouched by the sun for centuries. In the city's center, a pedestal held a crystal sphere, smooth and glowing softly. Elena reached out, and the sphere pulsed with warmth beneath her fingers. Suddenly, the city's walls flickered, revealing bustling markets, lively music, and laughter. Echoes from another era brought briefly to life. Elena realized the city's secrets weren't just carved in stone, but lived on in the stories preserved within its very air. With careful sketches and detailed notes, she returned home, carrying not just a map, but the heartbeat of a civilization once forgotten, ready to share its tale with the world. Under the velvet shadow of midnight, the cat burglar known only as Vesper crept silently along the museum's rooftop. Every movement was calculated, every breath measured to avoid detection. Below, beams of light swept across polished marble floors as the night guard, Mr. Rourke, made his steady rounds. Vesper's gloved fingers found the skylight latch and, with practiced ease, she slipped inside. Her goal? The fabled starling diamond, rumored to be the most dazzling gem in the world. Silently, she landed behind a towering statue, watching as Rourke paused, sensing something amiss in the stillness. Vesper timed her steps perfectly with the ticking of the grand clock, weaving carefully through the maze of exhibits. Suddenly, Rourke's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the glass case. Vesper froze, just inches from her prize. Rourke's footsteps echoed, growing louder with each step. Thinking quickly, she reached into her pouch and tossed a small coin across the room. The clang echoed sharply, sending Rourke running in the opposite direction. With swift precision, Vesper disabled the alarm system, lifted the diamond from its pedestal, and vanished into the night as silently as she had come. Rourke returned moments later, finding only silence, and the faintest scent of jasmine lingering in the air.
Under the pale glow of the clock tower, Whiskers crept silently along the cool stone corridor. His paws made no sound as he darted between shadows, eyes gleaming with mischief and determination. He paused just before the heavy oak door, behind which the guard dozed deeply, his hat tipped over his face, keys dangling carelessly from his belt. Whiskers twitched his tail, calculating the perfect moment. With a graceful, silent leap, he landed softly on the guard's lap. The man snored on, completely undisturbed. Whiskers extended a gentle paw, batting carefully at the ring of keys. They jingled ever so slightly. The guard stirred, grumbled softly, then settled back into his slumber. Not wasting a second, Whiskers hooked the key ring with a sharp claw and tugged gently. The keys slipped free, clinking softly onto the cold floor. Whiskers froze, heart thumping wildly, but the guard only turned over, still asleep. Clutching his prize firmly in his mouth, Whiskers darted for the door. One by one, he tried each key until the lock clicked open with a satisfying sound. With a triumphant purr, Whiskers slipped quietly into the night, his mission complete, leaving behind only faint paw prints and a befuddled guard who would never know what had happened.
Under the silver gaze of midnight, the museum slumbered in eerie stillness. Mara, nimble and masked, slipped silently past the iron gates, her shoes barely whispering against the cold marble floor. She pressed herself into the shadows as red lasers flickered like silent sentinels across the ancient hall. Timing her breath with steady calm, she darted through the maze of beams, heart pounding fiercely in her ears. Up ahead, the prize gleamed under a soft spotlight, the Starfire diamond, cradled beneath a crystal glass dome. Mara drew a slender, gleaming tool from her belt and with practiced precision, disabled the alarm system. A soft click echoed. Too loud, she thought, but the silence held firm. She lifted the dome carefully, mindful not to tremble, and slipped the diamond into a velvet pouch. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. Mara pressed flat against the tapestry, barely daring to breathe. The guard paused, scanned the darkness with sharp eyes, then shrugged and moved on. Mara exhaled slowly, moving swiftly back the way she came. She scaled the wall with agile grace, flitted over the roof, and vanished into the city's sleeping embrace, the Starfire diamond secure in her grasp. The museum would wake to mystery, but Mara had already melted into legend.
At midnight, the old library stood silent, bathed in silver moonlight that filtered through stained glass windows. Whiskers, a nimble tabby with a knack for silent paws and a heart full of mischief, slipped through a cracked window with practiced ease. Clutched gently in her mouth was a tattered copy of The Secret Garden, its corners worn by countless eager readers and whispered secrets. She darted past towering shelves, weaving deftly between shadows, her bright green eyes fixed on the children's section where her best friend waited. There, curled on a soft cushion, slept Oliver, a gray kitten with dreams too big for his own whiskers and a restless spirit. Quiet as the hush between turning pages, Whiskers placed the cherished novel beside him, nudging it gently toward his tiny paws. Oliver stirred, blinked sleepily, and met her gaze. Understanding sparkled between them like a shared secret. Whiskers gave a small nod, her mission complete. She retraced her steps, slipping out just as the clock chimed 1, the sound echoing softly through the stillness. By morning, Oliver would have a new story to chase, a new world to explore. Outside, Whiskers paused, tail held high, heart thumping with quiet triumph. The library's secrets were safe, and a friend's wish had been granted, all under the watchful eyes of the moon.
At precisely midnight, as the town slumbered beneath a velvet sky dotted with stars, a silent shadow glided from rooftop to rooftop. It was no ordinary owl. With feathers as dark as ink and eyes glowing like lanterns, it clutched a crisp envelope in its talons. The bird paused above a dimly lit window and gently let the letter slip onto the sill before vanishing into the night's embrace. Inside, 12-year-old Jamie blinked awake, drawn by a faint tapping sound. Curiosity overcame sleepiness as he reached out and found the envelope, sealed with a wax stamp shaped like a crescent moon. Inside, the letter began, "You have been chosen." Instructions followed. "Meet at the old clock tower at midnight. Bring only courage, trust no one." Jamie's heart pounded fiercely. He'd always sensed he was meant for more than quiet days and endless homework. Now a secret duty called, shrouded in mystery and promise. As he tiptoed into the cool night air, the owl circled once above, its glowing eyes approving. Somewhere, someone needed Jamie's help, and under the watchful gaze of the midnight messenger, he would answer the call.
In the dusty corner of an old watchmaker's shop, a peculiar clock stood. Its face was cluttered not with numbers, but with swirling colors and tiny painted figures, foxes in hats, dancers in flowing gowns, and dragons weaving between the hours. Every midnight, as the minute hand struck 12, the clock chimed a gentle, silvery note that seemed to ripple through the air. The painted figures began to stir. First, a fox twitched its tail and tipped its hat with a sly grin. Next, the dancers spun gracefully, their skirts swirling in endless circles, laughter echoing in silent rhythm. Even the dragons arched their backs and soared along the rim, trailing wisps of painted smoke that shimmered like an outside. The world slept, unaware that within these wooden walls, a secret revelry unfolded nightly, alive with color and motion. The watchmaker, old and gentle, watched with a knowing smile, careful never to interrupt the magic that brought his creations to life. When dawn approached, the figures would yawn, stretch, and settle back into stillness, their vibrant energy folding away like a dream. Waiting patiently for the next midnight, the clock ticked on, holding a hidden world of wonder and enchantment within its painted face.
On a drizzly afternoon, Lucy tugged her yellow raincoat tighter as she splashed through puddles on her way home. The raincoat had belonged to her older brother, and its pockets were deep and mysterious. As Lucy warmed her hands inside the coat, her fingers brushed against something crinkly. Curious, she pulled out a faded scrap of paper. Unfolding it carefully, she saw a hand-drawn map filled with tiny arrows and strange symbols she didn't recognize. Her heart skipped a beat. This wasn't any ordinary map. Without hesitating, Lucy decided to follow the first clue, a crooked tree by the old-school fence. When she arrived, she spotted a chalk mark and a riddle scrawled beneath it. Each step led her through familiar streets that suddenly felt magical because of the promise of discovery. A bright red mailbox, a toppled statue covered in moss, a wooden bench with a missing plank. Finally, the last clue pointed to the big oak tree in the town square. Lucy knelt by its roots and began digging gently with her hands. Her fingers soon closed around a small tin box. Inside, she found a smooth marble, a colorful button, and a folded note that read, "For the cleverest explorer. Keep searching." Lucy grinned widely, the rain forgotten, as the world around her seemed full of secret possibilities waiting to be uncovered.
Ellie found the tiny brass key beneath her grandmother's old armchair, its shape oddly familiar and worn from years of use. She turned it over in her palm, recalling the glass snow globe that always sat on the mantel, home to a miniature village frozen in perpetual winter. On a sudden impulse, Ellie examined the globe's base more closely and discovered a small, hidden keyhole she had never noticed before. Her heart pounding with excitement, she carefully inserted the key and gently twisted it. Instantly, the snow inside began to swirl of its own accord, faster and faster, until the glass shimmered with a silvery, almost magical light. The tiny houses flickered to life, their windows glowing warmly against the cold. Figures emerged, tiny villagers waving, skating on frozen ponds, building snowmen with joyful smiles. Their laughter echoed faintly through the dome, filling the room with a sense of wonder. Ellie gasped as a narrow path formed from the globe's center to the glass wall. A tiny figure beckoned her closer, holding a delicate note pressed against the glass. "Thank you for setting us free." Ellie smiled, realizing she'd unlocked not just a snow globe, but a hidden world brimming with magic and stories, waiting to be discovered anew.
Eli wandered through the narrow alley behind the old clockmaker's shop, drawn by a faint ticking that danced softly on the crisp autumn breeze. His shoe nudged something hidden beneath a thick pile of golden, rustling leaves. Curious, he knelt down and uncovered a small brass pocket watch, its surface shimmering with intricate engravings, stars, moons, and curling vines that seemed to shift in the light. When Eli pressed the side button, the watch sprang open, but instead of a chime, a gentle purr vibrated through his fingers, warm and alive. Startled, he held it close to his ear. The purr grew louder, soothing and deep, as the watch's hands began to spin backwards, swirling the world around him in a dizzying whirl. Suddenly, Eli found himself standing in a garden where time looped like a cat's tail. Flowers bloomed and wilted in seconds, butterflies danced in endless circles, and the air shimmered with quiet magic. The watch pulsed softly, guiding him back through the swirling moments. With a blink, he was once again in the alley, leaves whispering at his feet, the purr fading into a gentle tick. Eli smiled, slipping the watch carefully into his pocket, its secret safe for now, its magic quietly humming, waiting patiently for another adventure to begin. In a quiet village, old Mr. Renard labored under the golden lamplight of his cluttered workshop. For decades, he crafted delicate timepieces, each whispering of his unwavering devotion to precision and artistry. Yet tonight, his trembling hands worked on something different, a watch unlike any before. This invention, if finished, would mark the culmination of his life's work, a timepiece that could record not just hours, but memories themselves, capturing moments to be relived forever. As the clock struck midnight, Renard heard footsteps outside, slow and deliberate. He knew rivals coveted his designs, and now the risk was real and immediate. He quickly hid the nearly finished watch in a secret compartment within his favorite grandfather clock. The door creaked open. Shadows danced across the walls. Renard faced his intruder, a former apprentice, desperate for fame and fortune. With gentle resolve, Renard offered him a choice. Take the plans and risk losing everything, or learn the craft and honor the legacy. The apprentice hesitated, then knelt beside the master. Together, they wound the new watch, each tick echoing Renard's true legacy, not just invention, but inspiration passed on through patience, trust, and shared passion. Dexter had one rule while time traveling: blend in. But on his trip to 52 BC, he tripped, literally, over his own shoelaces and landed smack in the middle of a royal tent. The ancient king, intrigued by Dexter's sturdy hiking boots, mistook them for a divine gift. Before Dexter could protest, the king eagerly swapped his own golden, jewel-encrusted sandals for Dexter's boots and proudly strode out, marveling at their comfort. Dexter, now stuck in sandals 2 sizes too small and sparkling like disco balls, scrambled to follow. But the sandals squeaked loudly with every step, drawing unwanted attention from the king's guards and a flock of curious chickens pecking nearby. Dexter's frantic attempts to explain himself only deepened the king's belief that he was a divine messenger sent from the heavens. After a chaotic chase through the palace grounds, Dexter finally escaped back to his time machine, his feet sore but his spirits surprisingly high. He returned home clutching a pair of ancient sandals as proof of his bizarre adventure, and with a newfound respect for Velcro. From that day on, Dexter double-knotted his shoes, just in case history ever called for another unexpected footwear exchange. The first sign of trouble appeared when Mrs. Jenkins spotted a neon green paw kneading dough in her favorite bakery. The new owners, Fluff Norb and Whiskatron, were not your average bakers. They were cat-shaped aliens with a questionable grasp of Earth's recipes. Their mission? Blend in with humans. Their method? Open a bakery. The only problem? They thought croissants were hats and eclairs should be filled with tuna. Customers entered, expecting sweet treats, and left with pastries that meowed or vibrated suspiciously. A jelly donut bounced across the counter, chased by a giggling Fluff Norb. Whiskatron's secret recipe muffins sprouted tiny tails and purred when petted. The duo's attempts at frosting involved glittering goo that occasionally glowed in the dark, startling the night shift. Yet, the chaos drew a crowd. Soon, the bakery became the hottest spot in town, with people lining up for a chance to sample the unpredictable menu. Pastry mayhem reigned, but laughter echoed louder than ever. As the sun set, Fluff Norb and Whiskatron purred in satisfaction, convinced they'd finally blended in. If only Earthlings always loved their food this weird. In a sunlit attic overlooking a bustling city, Lena stared at a blank canvas. Her hands trembled, still haunted by the memory of her first gallery rejection. A sharp letter that declared her work too whimsical, too strange, lacking the seriousness they sought. Weeks passed, but her brushes remained untouched, buried beneath dust and doubt. One evening, a gentle rain tapped the window, and Lena wandered outside, seeking solace in the quiet streets. She watched as puddles shimmered, reflecting neon signs and streetlights, blending reality with a kaleidoscope of possibility. Inspiration flickered like a fragile flame. Back in her attic, Lena let her imagination spill onto the canvas. She painted dreams, a child soaring on a paper bird, a city blooming with impossible flowers, a sky swirling with laughter and light. Each stroke freed her from the chains of doubt and fear. When her newfound collection was unveiled at a small community show, it drew quiet awe and whispered admiration. People saw their own hopes and hidden joys in her colors. Lena smiled, realizing her setbacks were merely shadows that made the light in her art shine even brighter. The world finally saw her not as a failed artist, but as a true painter of dreams. Evelyn visited the old library every Thursday, drawn by the scent of ancient paper and the hush that blanketed the stacks. One evening, as she traced her finger along a row of poetry, a sudden chill brushed her arm. She glanced up and caught a pale shimmer near the window, just for a heartbeat. At the same moment, across the aisle, Jonah looked up from his desk. Their eyes met, wide with the shared recognition of something unexplainable. Wordlessly, they drifted toward the window, where the faint outline of a woman in a flowing dress seemed to linger, her smile gentle and wistful. The ghost hovered, then faded, leaving only the echo of laughter and the faint rustle of turning pages. From then on, Evelyn and Jonah returned each week, sometimes reading in silence, other times sharing stories about the apparition. With every visit, the library felt warmer, the air less heavy, as if the ghost's presence softened the space. The gentle spirit, once a mystery, became their secret companion, quietly encouraging their growing bond with every whispered page turned and every shared glance across the quiet room. Under the pale gaze of a full moon, the city's rooftops glimmered with dew, each droplet catching the faint light like tiny stars scattered across the night. At precisely midnight, a sleek black cat leapt silently onto the windowsill of apartment 4B, her emerald eyes glinting with a knowing intelligence in the darkness. The window, always left ajar by its cautious occupant, opened with a gentle nudge of her paw. Clenched delicately in her mouth was a scrap of parchment, edges singed and inked with looping cryptic script that seemed to pulse with hidden meaning. She padded softly across the wooden floor, tail flicking with purpose, and dropped the note onto the nightstand beside a sleeping figure. The sleeper stirred, sensing the feline's presence, and awoke just in time to glimpse the cat vanishing back through the window into the night. Heart pounding, they unfolded the parchment carefully. The message read, "The lantern glows only for those who seek. Midnight waits by the old willow." No signature, just a paw print stamped in ink, mysterious and deliberate. With a shiver of anticipation, the recipient dressed swiftly, knowing this was their summons to something beyond the ordinary. Outside, the cat watched from the shadows, her mission complete until the city called again. Rain drummed steadily on the rooftops as laughter echoed down Maple Lane. Under heavy gray clouds, a band of children gathered by the swollen creek, clutching their masterpieces, paper boats, folded with secret hopes and quick fingers. Nora's was bright blue, adorned with a tiny toothpick flag fluttering in the breeze. Leo's was sturdy, his initials boldly scrawled on the sail with a thick marker. On the count of 3, they knelt by the muddy bank and carefully launched their boats into the churning water. The tiny fleet bobbed, spun, and darted around rocks and twigs, carried by the swift current. Nora shouted encouragement as her boat zipped ahead, only to snag suddenly on a wet leaf. Leo's boat wobbled dangerously, nearly tipping over, but somehow stayed afloat, catching the current and surging forward. The kids sprinted along the bank, cheering wildly, slipping in the mud, their hearts pounding as they urged their vessels onward. As the finish line, a crooked stick bridge, loomed ahead, Leo's boat nudged past the final whirlpool, crossing first. Cheers erupted from the muddy shore. Nora grinned, waving her soggy flag with pride. Victory was sweet, but sharing the race and the rainy day adventure made it even better. At the stroke of midnight, the city was a labyrinth of shimmering puddles and flickering neon lights. A slender cat, fur slick with rain, darted swiftly from shadow to shadow, whiskers twitching with sharp purpose. Clenched delicately in her jaws was a tiny rolled parchment, sealed tightly with crimson wax. The message was urgent, meant for eyes waiting in the hush of the old bell tower. Padding silently, she navigated the maze, leaping over trash bins, squeezing under wrought iron gates, and pausing only when headlights swept the alleyways like searching eyes. Thunder rumbled low as she scaled a fire escape, claws scraping cold metal with practiced ease. On the rooftop, the city below pulsed with restless energy, but the cat pressed on, undeterred by the storm. At last, she slipped through a broken window, landing softly beside an outstretched hand. The recipient, cloaked in shadows, smiled and carefully broke the seal. The cat purred softly, her mission complete. Outside, rain hammered the rooftop, washing away her paw prints. Somewhere in the night, the balance had shifted, all thanks to a silent feline messenger. The library was supposed to close at 7, but Milo lost track of time, sitting cross-legged behind a shelf of ancient encyclopedias. By the time he looked up, the lights had dimmed and the only sound was the slow tick of the grandfather clock echoing through the empty halls. Heart pounding, Milo crept toward the exit, but his foot caught on something hidden beneath a loose floorboard. He knelt and carefully pried it up, revealing a folded piece of paper. In the glow of his phone, he read the shaky handwriting. "Look behind the lion's gaze." Milo's curiosity burned brighter than his fear. He tiptoed to the marble lion statue guarding the reading room. Its stone eyes stared forward, unblinking and cold. Milo reached behind its head and felt a small latch. With a soft click, a hidden compartment opened, revealing a silver key and another note. "For the brave, knowledge awaits." Milo grinned, slipping the key into his pocket. The darkness no longer scared him. Instead, the silent shelves seemed to whisper promises of more secrets, waiting just for him to discover. Tonight, the library belonged to Milo, and he was ready for its mysteries.
What if the key to an unbeatable army wasn't just strength, but love? In the 4th century BCE, a small city-state formed one of history's most extraordinary military units, the Sacred Band of Thebes. This elite force consisted of 150 pairs of male lovers, united by a belief that warriors fighting alongside their beloved would display unmatched courage, loyalty, and a willingness to face death without hesitation. Their deep personal bonds forged a unity so strong it shattered expectations on the battlefield. The sacred band first stunned the ancient world at the Battle of Leuctra in 371 BCE, where they played a pivotal role in defeating a seemingly invincible enemy force. Their innovative tactics, combined with unwavering devotion to one another, inspired their comrades and terrified opponents. For decades, the sacred band stood as a symbol of discipline, bravery, and the power of human connection. Their legacy endures as proof that the ties of love can shape the course of history, turning ordinary men into legends whose valor echoes across the ages. Like, if you're fascinated by history's untold stories, subscribe for more epic tales of courage, love, and bravery.